What's up, peeps?
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Last class, basically. Saturday is a work day. Crazy.
Wow.
Yeah, last one.
Yeah, that's crazy indeed.
Yeah.
Many tears shed.
What?
Many tears shed.
Yeah. Okay, let's do it. We got enough people here, I think. Okay, so all right, so where we left off, actually, let me close that. Okay. All right, so today, I closed the thing that I was about to show. Okay, so today we are going to look into adding a new model. So in the last class, I had already created the models that we have been using so far, which are just the menu and the cart. So where we left off in terms of functionality is we've got our menu, and we can add stuff to the cart. And then we can go to the cart. I think this is like doing that weird not refresh thing again. Okay, there we go. So we have our menu, we have our cart, and it's all hooked up to an actual database now. And we're using Prisma, which is our ORM, to talk with that database. It's a SQLite database. And we, at the end, we saw how we could, and this probably was pretty mind-blowing. We saw how we can basically join data together from separate tables. So we've got our menu, then we've got our cart, and we're adding things from our menu to the cart. So when we look at stuff in the cart, we can say, hey, grab that stuff from the menu table and join it, so that I can see not just like the cart information, like what's in the cart and how many, but also the menu details, like the name and the description and price and stuff like that. So we saw how we could join this stuff together. So now that when we look at the cart, we see what's in the cart, and we see how many of them are in the cart, and we also see the name of the menu item because we joined that in. And then if you'll remember, we can run our project with dev, but then if we want to see anything in the database, one way to do that is with the Prisma Studio. And so there's a few new commands that I added for dealing with the database. One of them is the studio command, so you can run npm run db:studio. And it will open up this sort of GUI for you to be able to see what's in the database. And so you can see our two models, cart and menu, and then we can see all our menu items here, and then also see all our cart items.
This last week, is this GUI, this is something built into Prisma?
right, yeah.
Okay.
Yep, so it's called Prisma Studio. Okay, and to make all this to like tell Prisma, you know, to set up the data that we want to deal with in our system, we write the Prisma schema. So there's the schema.prisma file that we saw that's in the Prisma folder. And in there, we define our models. So this is where, you know, we learned about, hey, there's this thing called a schema, which is for the definition of the fields and the type of fields in that you want to deal with. And so you define that in this file, and then Prisma takes care of setting up your database for you according to this file. Okay, so today we're going to look at adding a new model. So the new model that we've talked about is the like order model. So if we want to check out, could also be called checkout, but like if we want to check out, if we want to actually buy the stuff in the cart, then usually that means your cart clears at that point and you make an order, right? And then you have, okay, here's your order and here's what you ordered. So we'll call it orders. I think that makes sense. So we're gonna add that new model for orders. And then time permitting, we will also look at sorting and paginating, which is a super common pattern that we've seen on Pitchfork, for example, but you'll see it on any page, or you know, most web apps that you use do some sort of pagination, meaning like, you know, you don't load everything at once. You know, when you hit the Google search page, you get the first page of results, not every page. And you go to the second page, you know, almost never, right? But you know, you go to the second page and that's called paginating. So there's this result set and you need to paginate it to make it so that you're not just like pulling in more data than you need to. We saw it on Pitchfork as well, like when we were looking at the best new albums and we would scroll down, there'd be like a next page button and then we could go further back in time for the reviews. And then you might have heard of like infinite scrolling or infinite pagination. So those are things where that was like a really cool thing at one point, you know, that was really fancy, which is like as you scroll, when you get to the near the bottom, it automatically fetches the next page of results. You don't have to click next page and then adds them, and you can kind of just infinitely scroll. But even with an infinite scroll, it's not loading all the content. It's only loading it as you get near the bottom of the current list. So all databases support some sort of pagination as like a way to be able to do that. Okay, any questions before I jump in? Okay, all right, so need a new model. We want to start tracking orders. Most likely what'll happen is in our app, we'll be in the cart and then we'd have some sort of button, you know, that's like order now, you know, or check out or whatever. And then usually that's a more complicated flow. You know, you would hit checkout and then it would be like, okay, and you know, what's your address and what's your billing information and everything. We won't do that. We'll just have a button that says checkout and then makes the order. So when you guys think about the order table, what are some of the attributes that might be in it? What's the schema of the order table?
There'll be an ID.
Yep.
Quantity.
Yeah, so so most of the time you end up just sort of copying what you already had, right? So I'm gonna copy cart. And then just rename it to order, right? And then like Philip said, we'll have an ID, so this works the same. Let me just kind of delete everything and we'll talk through it all. But usually table stakes for a table, they all have these three things, pretty much always. The ID, and then the created at and the updated at. It's really helpful to have those things. And these, the created at and the updated at and the ID are all special column types that are sort of managed automatically by Prisma in the database. So it auto generates the ID for us, and then it auto sets created at based off when it was created. The first, whenever you create it the first time, it just timestamps that. And then whenever you update it, whenever you call Prisma update, it will also set the timestamp at that time. So these are, you pretty much always have these, at least I do. And then so you start with this, and then we just start deciding what other columns we want to add to our schema. What was mentioned? So I think quantity was mentioned. But quantity of what?
Well, won't you need like a item ID and order ID as well? And then a quantity to the item ID.
Yeah, so we'll need a quantity associated with the menu item that we're ordering. Yeah. So we'll talk about that. That'll get kind of tricky because we can't just put quantity and then like menu item ID. Because we want to have one order, right? That is all this stuff at one time. So like there should be one record created for the order, and then that one order would have many different items in the order, right? Because when we were doing the cart, we did something that's kind of funky, which is that like the way that we set up the schema is we have like a row for each menu item in the cart, and we're treating the whole table like it's like one big cart. But really, you know, we'll have many users of this application, and they each would have a cart. And so more likely when you're setting up your schema, you would have a cart, and then you would have like the user ID for who owns that cart. And then you would have like stuff in that cart. And so we kind of, this like cart model here is not like exactly what you would do in like a real world scenario, right? And so when we're starting to build out this order, that issue kind of becomes a little more apparent for us with the way that we've been setting things up. Because we want to make one order, but that order is going to have multiple things in it. And so like we can't just put quantity and menu item ID on the order like this, because we'd only be able to have one item in the order this way. So we'll talk about that in a second. Is there any other properties we would have on the order?
Total,
Say that again?
like the total price.
Yep, that's good. And that could be a float, right? So it's not an integer. It could be, you know, 1999 or whatever. Anything else?
Taxes,
Say that again?
taxes.
Taxes. Yeah. We'll just lump that into total for now, but yeah, you would, in like a real cart, you would have probably like subtotal and then taxes and then total or something like that. But for now, we'll just do a total, but yeah, that's totally true. Okay, some other stuff we might have is like, the billing information or, the shipping address or the, stuff like that. But again, we don't really have users associated with all these tables quite yet, so that doesn't necessarily make sense. So I think this is a good start. These items, okay. So in a relational database world, when you need to do this sort of, hey, we've got an order, but then we might have many items associated with that order. Does that sound like anything that we talked about last class in terms of a relationship type?
One to many?
Yeah, so that's so one order to many potential items is a one-to-many relationship. And so to make this sort of order, this like concept we have of the order, to make it in our code actually requires more than one table. So we have the order table, but then there's a relationship of one to many that we need to have the items that were ordered and the quantity of the items that we're ordering. So we need to say basically like, okay, we have the order and then we have like the items. You could call this menu items or order items or items, would all be fine. Depends on your preference. But we're gonna have this relationship to items. And then we need this other model that would be called like, actually, I'm gonna call this order items. So these are items that make up the order. And it kind of knows, it's so like Copilot kind of knows what I'm trying to do here. So it's actually suggesting what kind of makes sense, actually. So I'll just go ahead and accept it and then we can talk through it so I don't have to type all of it. So we're making another table. And again, every table sort of has table stakes of ID, created at, updated at. So don't have to think about that too much. This table's order items. And so the order items is associated with the order. So they will point back to the order. So notice that they've got an order ID and then they're associated, they have this relation to the order. Okay. They also have another relation to a menu item. So this is an example where this table has two relations, one to the order and then one to the original menu item that's a part of the order. And then we have the quantity that we kind of talked about. So I'm going to delete the items thing from up here. And what happens is if you have the Prisma extension installed, so you can go to extensions and install Prisma, which will help you when you're writing these files. So you'll want to have that extension. You can see it's because I have this extension, it's telling me that there's an error here, which is that we define this relation here, but it's not added to these other corresponding fields. And so when I hit save, it'll actually take care of doing that for me. So you'll notice, when I hit save, those red items went away, and order items showed up on the order here for me. And notice that it's this array here. It's saying, hey, for an order that will have a total, and then it will have a relation to a bunch of order items. And that's what this is saying. It's this model, order items, and it's an array. So there's more than one. There can be more than one. And then notice it also added that on the menu up here. So a menu item can be in a cart, and it can also be an order item, can be associated with those tables. So it might have been, that might have seemed kind of nuts, but basically whenever you're setting up a one-to-many relationship in a relational database like Postgres or SQLite, or you know, you set it up this way. You take the thing that's the mini item, and you have that reference back to the one item is a common way to do it. So that's what we did here. So we have order items, and then it's storing the ID of the order that it's associated with. So whenever you're just like reading the docs on Prisma and you're looking at their examples, they would show you, here's how you should set this up. And so that's what we followed here to make that. Okay. So we added these two new tables. So our schema has changed, and our database also needs to change. Whenever you do that, you have to run a command to change it. That is a Prisma command, and that's also something that I added. So anytime you change the schema, then you need to go and run a command that I provided, which is called, because faces are in the way, this db push. So we do npm run db push, which is just calling, it's a package JSON script that's just calling the Prisma db push command, which is a command that they provided in their documentation to sync the database. So I run that, it ran successfully. It says that your database is now in sync with your Prisma schema. So it looked at the Prisma schema and noticed that there was two new tables. Then it went and made those tables in the database for me. And then now I can do npm run db studio again, since I stopped that command. And look at our schema and notice that all models, we have cart, menu, but now we also have order and order items, which are empty. There's no records in there. Okay, so what we want to do is, let me close this. What we want to do is on this cart page, you know, let me remove some of these items. Okay, so we're on our cart page. Let's say we have these three items in our cart. So we want to add a button that says checkout, right? Probably would be good to show the total on this page too. So they know. But yeah, we want to add a checkout button. So we'll go to our front end. And here is our cart page. So we go to pages, and then cart index.js is the page loading on whenever we go to /cart, which I've been just manually going to because I never made a button on the menu page to go to the cart. So yeah, we load the cart page and we already did that to do. All right, so we want to add a button to check out. There's the checkout button. Let's put the total price. So check out now. And then we can put here, we'll put, oh, it's doing it for me. Total price. And we want to calculate the total price. So could be good to provide the total, like the back end could calculate the total price and provide it whenever we fetch the cart. Could be good. So that's one option I'd probably do, or we can calculate it on the front end. But probably would be good to calculate it on the back end. So remember I mentioned like if you could do something on the back end, do it. This is an example of that where I probably would do that. But for now, we'll just do a quick and dirty calculation for it. So we have our cart items and we want to make the total price. So const total price would be the, yep. So if we want to sum something, we can use the reduce method. There's also probably a sum method available. Let's see. Yeah, everyone's saying to use reduce. There's like a utility library called Lodash that a lot of people use that probably has this. I don't know if I've shown you guys Lodash before. It's just like a bunch of utility functions that do things for you. We don't have that installed. But I think it has a sum method on it. But if you don't pull in that library and just want to do it yourself, then reduce is the way that people would do it, the reduce method. So the total price is going to be the cart items. Dot cart dot reduce, which will then have each item, and then let's look at the format of our data. So we have the ID, the menu item ID, the quantity, the created at. And then we have nested inside of it the menu item because we did the join to include it. And then that is what has the price. So we need to do cart reduce, which then gets the item, and then yeah, menu item dot price. Oh yeah, times the quantity. Oh yeah, it did it right. So there's the price, and then the quantity is at the top level. And then we just add all those up, and then the starting value is 0. So this will be the total price. That's correct. So I calculate that up here, and then down here, I will display it. What the heck? There we go. Okay. All right, 27. I don't know if that sounds right. 1 latte at $5. 6 espressos at $3. And 1 flat white at $4. Sounds right to me. All right, so there's the total price, and we want to click checkout now, and we want to submit this order. So when we click checkout now, what would make sense to do? We would clear the cart of all the items and then probably send them to some sort of success page that's like, hey, successful order, and then have like the summary of the order, right? So what we could do is make a new page that would be like /order/order ID, and we could show the details from the order on that page. And so we can click checkout, make the order. If that's successful, then we could clear the cart. And then if that's all successful, then we can route them to the order page and show them the order. So let's start doing that. So we want to check out now, and then on click of that, we want to check out. And we need to make a function for that. So that would be async function to check out. Okay. So when we want to check out, so when we say, hey, I want to submit my cart, we don't really need to send any data because the backend has all of it already. So like we're simply just saying, hey, I want to check out now. So the backend could just say, okay, I'm going to look at everything in the cart, and then make an order out of that. So we don't need to like send all the cart items or anything like that. We could, but it's not necessary. So really our endpoint here can be so we haven't made our endpoint for this quite yet, but it could be to /API/orders, and it could be a post method to that index route. I think that makes sense to make a new order. And for the body, we don't really need to provide anything in this particular case. So we can just get rid of the body and the headers and just simply do a post request to /API/orders. Now that's because our cart is a global cart. Like there's one cart, right? We don't have it associated with the user. So if it was associated with the user, then we would do that post request, and then the backend would need to see what user it's for and then query for the cart for that user. But in this case, it's sort of this like global cart. So this is all we need to do. Okay, so let's just start with this. And then I mentioned we should clear the cart and we should route to a new page. But let's just do one thing at a time. So let's click the button, make the fetch request, and then or the post request, and make sure that's all working. So we've got our button. On click of it, we call checkout, which is this method here. And then it calls our post to /API/orders, and then alerts us. So let's go to our API and oh, that's funny. We have this handler here we never used. So we'll rename this to orders because that's what sorry, I think I want to make it singular. I always have a hard time deciding between singular versus plural, stuff like that. I'm sure you all will all as well, but so we'll rename this checkout endpoint in our API folder to be just called order. So we've got cart, menu, order. And we don't have anything implemented for that endpoint quite yet, right? So we need to implement a post handler for it. So we will do if request dot method equals post, and then else I think we've been doing 404s so far. So yeah, you know, we're checking the method type, and if it's not a method type that we support yet, then we're just saying 404. That method's not supported. So I'll do the same thing here. So 404 method not allowed or supported. Excuse me. Okay, so if we are posting to order, then we want to make a new order with the contents of the cart currently. So if I want to start interacting with the DB, what do I need to do? So how do I like start talking to the database? Like what's the thing that I would start typing?
Do you import it?
Yeah, so we need to import it. We need to import Prisma. So Prisma, if we look at our other methods, is this thing that we import to start querying for data. So we will do Prisma and it will help import that for us. And we can't call create yet on the order because I'm not sending any data. So we need to query for what's in the cart currently. So I will do prisma.cart find many. We want everything in the cart because that's, the cart's for one user. So everything in there is what's going to make up the order. So we can do this find many method, just get everything in the cart in this case. So we can call this const all cart items equals await prisma.cart.find many, because that's a database call. So it's going to be a promise. So we need to await it. And we need to make this handler function an async function so that we can use await. So this export default function needs to be export default async function. And so now we can do prisma.cart.find many to get everything in the cart. So that will be that's what we assign to that variable. Okay. If we look at our schema on an order, we need to add the total. And then we need to add the order items. And the order items have the order ID, the menu ID, and the quantity, right? We might also have the total quantity, right? So you ordered 9 items, total price of $27 or whatever. Okay, so we'll calculate that on the back end whenever we're running this method. So in our order, we have all the cart items, and then we need to calculate const. And so actually I want to update our schema to have total. And I now am like making schema changes. I want to like rename stuff. So I want to make this total price and total quantity. Actually, I don't like that. I think we're good with just price and quantity, because it's at the order level, so everyone knows that that's for the order. Okay, so I added a quantity to our order table. And so if I change the schema, what do I need to do?
You have to run that push command in terminal.
Yes, exactly. So back to the terminal, npm run db push. So it's in sync now. Okay, and here we are. So we need to calculate the quantity. And then the price. So Copilot's suggesting stuff for us. Let's make sure it's right though. So all cart items dot reduce each item. And then we start at 0 and then we add the item dot quantity. So that looks right to me. And then all cart items dot reduce item dot menu item dot price times item dot quantity. Okay. So notice that we queried for the cart, but then we're referencing menu item here in this generated code, which can totally be wrong, right? So if I query the cart and I do find many by itself like this, we just get the cart. And if I want to reference something on the menu item that's in the cart, what do I need to do to this find many to actually get the menu item data as well?
Is it you have to put in curly braces and specify the properties or something?
So
Okay.
yes, yeah, basically. And there's a specific property to join. We want to join the table. So we don't want just the cart. We want the cart joined with the menu table. Does anybody remember what that property is to do the join? It's not join. That's not the property. They could have named it that. But we do it elsewhere, right? So we do it when we load the cart. So you could look at the cart method. And you can see we do it here. So we're using await prisma.cart.find many here to load the cart page. And we see there's just this include. So we there's an include key, and then in there we specify what we want to join, because there may be more than one table that we could join to, right? So we have include, but then you specify what stuff you want to join. So just menu item in this case. Notice, like, for example, if we were querying for order items for some reason, we might decide to include both the menu items and the order itself. So that's, you might join to more than one table. Yeah, so we'll update this to have include and then menu item true. So that gets all our cart items and the menu items associated with it. And then we calculate the quantity and we calculate the price for everything that's in the cart currently. And so now we have all the information we need to make the order. So we can do prisma dot order dot create and I don't want to use ChatGPT in this case. So when we call Prisma.order, so that's the table we want to, by the way, it's always just the lowercase. So the model name is capital O order. But when you are referencing it on Prisma, it's lowercase, the table name. So here's the table name we want, and then we're calling create. So we want to create a row in the order table. And that takes, so for order, it takes price and quantity. And we calculated those up here. So within the data, so when we call create, we pass an object with the data key, and we can do quantity and price. So those are two properties up here, two constant variables. So I can do that shorthand syntax to say, hey, we want to set the property quantity, and the value of it is what's calculated in that variable. So we do that for quantity and price. And then the last thing is to include all of the things that we're ordering, right? So if we look at our schema, we need to add order items. And Prisma does this cool thing that allows us to, when we're making the order and we're calling create on order, we can also create order, like any of the like related tables. So we can create order items at the same time. So I can, if you just kind of read the documentation, you'll see this. So if we look at CRUD on the Prisma docs and look at create, they give this simple example of how to create here. But then you can see they're doing like a nested create here where they're doing the user and then they're including the posts. And then they have this example, oh, that's create many for one record. Okay, so for relations, which is what we're dealing with here, they have nested reads and then also nested writes. So we'll go down to the nested writes section. And so here they're giving an example of, they've got a user table. And so they're making a user and they've got an email and a name, but then that user might have posts. So this might be like a blog or something like that. And so you can, while you're making the user, you can make posts for that user. And like in this case, they're making more than one. And so they've got the title of each post here. And then since this is nested inside the user that it's creating, it knows to automatically set the IDs appropriately. So it'll take care of setting like the post ID and the user ID and making sure that they're related whenever it makes it. So we can do something similar when we're creating our order. So we have all our cart items here. And so we can do order items. Okay, this got more complicated than I was hoping, actually. So this is a pretty complicated query. But we queried for all the cart items and included the menu items. And when we're making our order items, we need to provide the order ID, which it knows what that is because it knows the order ID because it's making the order and it's nested inside of it. So this order ID and this order field are taken care of for us. We need to provide the quantity for the order item, which we're doing right here. And then we need to specify the menu item ID. So can actually change this to menu item ID. Okay. So I know that this is probably a lot, so you guys will have to kind of look at it on your own, I think, for it to make full sense. But we are creating an order. We have calculated the quantity and the price of all the items in the cart. And then here we're simply trying to specify all the items in the cart for the order. So like your cart is this sort of ephemeral thing that may change over time. You may add stuff to it, remove stuff to it, remove stuff from it. You may check out and then clear it. But you know, if we have 3 items in the cart and we make the order, we need to say, okay, here's the order and here are the 3 items that were ordered. So we're basically taking the cart items and making them into order items associated with the order. And so we're just associating the menu item ID for the thing that was ordered, and then the quantity that you were ordering at that time. So that's what's happening here. So we need to call that create and await it. So whenever we're creating something in the database, that is also a promise, right? It has to go talk to the database and add all this stuff and then get back a successful response that it was able to do so. So we await this call to Prisma to create the order. And then we can respond with, you know, status 200 and then just, you know, well, in this case, it probably makes sense to respond with the ID of the order that we created. So we need to const order. So whenever we create something, Prisma will return that newly created thing and include the ID of it for us. And so we can response 200 JSON with the ID and do order.id. Okay, a lot of times when you write stuff with Prisma, it's not going to work the first time you try it. These like nested things like this where we have, you know, create with data, then order items with create, and then we're mapping over something, you know, it's kind of gnarly. And so you can mess stuff up. So it's likely that this will break. So we'll see what happens though. But we have our method now, our post request at /API/order. And so on our page, we are calling that method so we can test it now. I think we've done everything to kind of test this initial step here. So we'll reload this page. We've got total price 27, and then move this and hit checkout now, and it broke. So we got a 500. So something wrong happened. So we'll figure that out. So whenever we get a 500 like that, we need to go check the logs in our, not in our console here, because what broke was the back end. So the front end didn't break, but the back end broke when it was trying to generate the response. So we need to go look at our logs here where our running server is. Okay. So the error here is cannot read properties of undefined. And it was trying to read create. Okay. And then you can see down here, it gives us kind of a little snippet of where that went wrong. And so Prisma.order is undefined. So notice cannot read properties of undefined. So it's trying to read create, but order is undefined. So there's something, you know, either I didn't generate Prisma correctly or my model name is off or something like that, right? So when we go back and look at our schema, man, I cannot get your guys' face in the right spot. Let me move it for good. All right, so we go back to our schema Prisma. We have menu, cart, order items, and the model is called order. So that looks right to me, actually. So let me restart it real quick and just make sure that's not the issue. Okay, I just needed to restart it. I'm not, that's so weird because normally Next like refreshes for you. And I've noticed there's something wrong with the way we have our project set up where it's not refreshing the way I expect. Okay, so in this case, we got a 200 back. That doesn't mean that our data was created correctly, but it at least responded with the 200. And then we get this alert order created with ID 1. That's promising. It seems like it did make our, like we had no orders in the database, so the first order is going to have ID 1. So we click OK. And then if we want to see what happened, we can go look in Prism Studio, right, to look at what's in the database. So we can go here and then refresh this and see that there's order with 1 record in it. And then also very promising sign, there's order items that has 3 records in there. Because remember our cart, whenever we clicked checkout, has 3 items in it. So we can go to order and look at that. Man, what's wrong with this thing? Okay, there we go. So here are the properties in the table. So we've got our ID 1, we've got our created at, updated at, and then more importantly, price that looks correct. So the total price is 27 and then 8 items. That seems right. And then we can go look at our order items. And we have an ID for the order item, but then it's associated with the order of ID 1, right? So all 3 of these items are associated with that one order with ID 1. And then we also are linked back to our menu item, which is good. And we have our quantity here. So the 8 quantity we saw on the total for the order is correct because we have 1, 6, and 1. And then we are linked back to our menu items as well. So, you know, you made an order, here are the items in the order, and then if we need to, we can go look back and see what that item was. So menu item ID 1 is a latte. So you ordered a latte, and you ordered an espresso and you ordered flat white, right? So that all looks correct. So that worked. And we don't have enough time to do everything I described per usual. But you know, what we would have done is after successfully creating this order, we would have called prisma.cart.delete many. So we would have deleted the whole cart, right? Because now, you know, you bought all that stuff, so it doesn't need to be in your cart anymore. And then we didn't get a chance to build out the order page and like show the order. But you know, that's what we would do next. We would query the order and join the menu items and the order items so that we could show a page with all of that detail as well. So we'll do that on Saturday together. But yeah, I'll push this up. I would, I know this is probably pretty confusing, but I would just kind of look through this code and look through some of the Prisma documentation and just try to get a feel for it. Yeah, that's it. Any questions or anything?
That was a lot. That's cool, but it's a lot.
Yeah.
Wait.
Yeah,
Kind of see it though.
yeah, I mean, I think code wise, it's probably quite a bit and hard to follow, but hopefully conceptually it makes some sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I sure think so. Well, awesome. Well, thank you. See you Saturday to figure out some more.
All right, see you all Saturday.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
All too. See you.
Thank you.